Howdy, Jason here, and today in the AutoEdit garage we're going to be doing a long overdue upgrade to the brakes on the Dodge Ram here. I ordered the PowerStop Z36 Extreme pads, rotors, and red powder coat calipers for these things. Not only do they look amazing, they're going to offer that little bit of peace of mind and upgraded performance that I've been wanting for this thing. Now, come on in. I've got 3 of them done. I'm going to bring you in for the install. It's a very straightforward install. I ran into a few little snags. I'm going to show you back here what happened. I ended up having to rebuild quite a bit of the hard line in the rear end of this truck just because of past modifications. So those are done. We're about to slap the last caliper on and pads, and then we'll bleed the system. And I thought, since I've already shown you how to install this, and this is fairly straightforward, I'm gonna bring you in and show you how I'm gonna bleed this thing. And that's kind of an interesting part of this process. I have a little vacuum pump. I'll show you how to do some solo, and then you may end up still needing a second person, but we're gonna give this a try. Come on in, check this out. I started on the rear brakes because I knew there was a bit of upkeep necessary back there. First was to replace these haggard flex lines. The driver's side was actually kinked. I then found both of the hard lines that these connected to needed repairs as well, so I made new ones with the last bit of nickel copper tubing I had ordered for the Mustang brake system. That ate up a few hours, but the install looks good, and I was now looking forward to getting started on the fronts. So we're just going to buzz through the install of the caliper. The rotors are a very straightforward thing. You just pull the old caliper off, and I just set that right here for now. And that literally was just these 2 bolts right here and from the spindle here. And I always go a little bit crazy with the wire wheel and clean up my lugs, my studs, the axle flanges, all of the axle flanges all the way around. I cleaned up the inside here, and just to get that freshened up for you before you do the install. And then I just bolted I used some big nuts as spacers here and some of the lug nuts to just hold the rotor in place. And then basically you're just going to take the new caliper, and I use red Loctite on these. So you just put some red Loctite on there, and then those, and that very simply mounts. It's funny, I just realized that having a camera on this side and on that side makes for little awkward angles here. This is the one that gets me the good view of the install. But basically, that bolts into place like thus. Tighten that down. Get them tight. Then tighten those down. Now it's just time to assemble all these little tabs on your brake pads, and those go on just like that. And then before you slap these into place, you take a little bit of the supplied grease. You know, there's always not quite enough of this stuff, if you ever notice when you do your brakes. And I just put a little bit of that in all of the places where moving things are going to touch brackets, calipers, whatever. Being careful, obviously, not to get these on your new fancy rotors. I gotta say that the red paint powder coat is actually it's cool factor. Let's call it what it is. It's really handsome, it's really cool looking. The fact that these are remanufactured with all fresh parts is great. So you have that peace of mind. This is an 8-year-old truck, 150,000 hard miles on it. So that's just kind of one of those things that to upgrade and peace of mind and just put fresh components on where you can is a good thing. So that's part of that. Also, the cool factor of big, shiny, red calipers. And then these just slide into place like thus. Very simple. And those little springs help keep that from dragging against the rotor. Put this one in place. Very straightforward and simple. And that's on. All right, now it's time to get the actual clamping force applied to here. This is a floating caliper, where this is the dual pistons in the front here that will actually do all the braking duties. Let me show you. So got some blue Loctite for these bolts. We'll put those aside for now because we have one little task before we install this, and that's to continue our greasing of parts that touch pads. And these are easily overlooked little parts of the install, but they're really actually important in the sense that these cut down on the noise that your pads will make later as they start wearing, and it'll create a little bit of chatter and what will be perceived as some squeal. So just put this on every spot that actually touches pads. So I'm gonna put that on inside of there, plus I'm gonna put it out here. So let me show you here. So you have a little bit of grease there, and then you have a little bit of grease on the inside of there. Now, it's just simply a matter of make sure our pads are in place, squeeze them in a little bit, and then take our bolts that mount the caliper to the caliper bracket and put those in. And those are the bolts that have a little bit of blue Loctite on there. And we'll tighten those down. And that, I believe, is a 13 millimeter. And you want to take an 11/16, I think. Yes, 11/16 to hold this inside bolt here and keep that one from spinning. As you can see, this is simple stuff, easy stuff. Next up, simply transfer over the brake line from the old caliper to the new one using the fresh crush washers. Then, well, because it's me, you know what's after that. So we're gonna go ahead and use some of our CRC brake clean. Just do a quick cleanup of where any brake fluid may have dripped. And that way we'll know when new stuff drips, because it'll be fresh. So let's wipe that down. Let's get the vacuum hose. Hey, buddy. And then Pinto the dog wants you to kick her soccer ball. Ready? Get it. One thing I did notice while I was in here cleaning is that some of my suspension pieces are worn out. That's quite a bit of movement there on this upper A-arm, but that's okay. It's on the list of things to repair and replace, so that just shows how much that is in need of that. Now, before we start to bleed the system, here's a really important thing to keep your eye on or keep your attention towards. This is the brake master cylinder reservoir here, and you never want this to get low or suck air during this process, because it is an absolute nightmare to bleed that once you get that little bit of air in the system. It's already going to be a trick just to do this, legit. So just be aware, keep this thing full. And as you bleed a little fluid out of the system, come back and check that. Now, since it's windy out here today, I'm just going to leave the cap on just to keep debris from getting in there, but that's all that is. So be aware of that. Keep that full. Keep this handy. Okay, so now this is just an old school Actron vacuum pump kit, and it comes with a few different fittings, and what you're going to want to do is just find whatever fitting actually attaches there. That one seems to do pretty good, so we'll put that on there.
I actually like that to go up like so. Then you attach that to this little reservoir. This will catch any fluid. And then the reservoir has another little hose here that will go to our little hand pump. Now, I keep thinking that I don't need to get a more powerful, or like, you know, a electronic or a air operated one of these things, because I'm done doing brakes for now, and sure enough, here it is, I need it again. So you could upgrade that, but what you'll do now is you draw a little vacuum just to see how it seals, and sure enough, look at that, I'm holding a little bit of vacuum. You can see the bubbles coming out through this thing. That means that that's not tight. Oh, it is not tight. Surprise! Oh, these cameras. So right now that just shows you that actual fluid and air are coming out of this bleeder, which is at the top of this thing. And that's fantastic. I'm just going to let that continue to do that. See, and now you can actually tell how much fluid is building up and not just air by watching the amount move up the hose. This is why I like to have the hose facing upwards. It kind of gives you a little kind of gauge of what's going on here, of how much fluid is being moved and how much air is being moved. So as you can see, the bubbles are decreasing here. I'm going to put one more draw on this thing. And that drew quite a bit of fluid. As you can see, the fluid level is going up quite a bit. So it's actually moving quite a bit of fluid through. There's still quite a bit of air. So we'll just keep going here. And this is just the easy preliminary bleed. Like, you don't want to count on this. You may have a great pedal. It's happened before, but you don't want to count on it. So make sure that you have a buddy. Like, we'll see how this goes, and we'll see what the pedal feels like. So let's see what we got here. So I'm going to close the bleeder, draw a little bit of vacuum. See, it holds a little bit of vacuum there, and then open the bleeder. Moves quite a bit of fluid through. That's a lot of fluid, so we're looking very good. Now's a good time just to be patient and get it done right. Looking very good. I'll close that. I'll do the same thing one more time. So right now we haven't even drawn that much. This is where I would say it's a good idea to, watch this, just stand up and check your master cylinder. And as you can tell, two things, common sense, we've only actually moved this much fluid, but you're still filling the caliper, so you want to make sure. And I can see, since there's no wheel well here, I just realized I could actually see the master cylinder. But stand up and double check that thing, just to make sure. All right, so let's do one more pump. So the bleeder is closed. You can see it's drawn a little bit through the end. I'll stabilize that and crack the pump, or crack the bleeder. As you can see, it's moving quite a bit of air, a little bit of fluid. Looking very good. Okay, time to do that on the other side. One last tip, just to keep the mess down a little bit. I will draw some vacuum on the line as I pull this off, and it will suck the fluid into the reservoir. See? Magic. Less mess, which is good.
And after repeating that process at all four corners, the truck was ready for a test drive. So here we are, out in the wild. I decided to put these brakes right to the test and take it up the canyon here and see some scenery, maybe touch a little dirt. We'll see. But right now, let's touch on the break-in or the seating procedure. If you go to this video here, I do that in the Jeep in great detail, so I didn't want to bore you guys with that now. It's basically the process of seating your brake pads to your rotors by going through a heat cycle, 2 series of heat cycles, and that, because these are carbon fiber ceramic pads, they have resin in them, and that seats the pads to the rotors. It's a really good process. Pay attention, do that correctly. Be aware not to overheat them when you do that process, and then go rock and roll. I just did that process and they feel great. Let's go hit this canyon. So let me talk about the initial feel on the brakes so far. They're fantastic. The pedal feel is so much lighter. This is just, it's a glaring example of why didn't I do this sooner on this truck. I mean, I know the laundry list is long of things I want to do, but darn it, this is an amazingly practical and important upgrade. So here's an example. There's a 35-mile-an-hour zone coming up ahead, and I want to just get aggressively down to that, and let's hit the brakes. Wow. Okay, just an example. It took so much less pedal effort to get a ton of braking input and to get this truck slowed down. That is amazing. It's not often that you do an upgrade and get that big of a gain right out of the package. So again, this is one of those no duh. I wish I had done this sooner, but I'm really glad that I've done it. Hard on brakes. Boy, this thing feels good. I don't know why it's so much fun to drive this thing on these tight canyon roads, but it sure is. Whew. Right here, boom, hard. I could feel the anti-lock brakes just starting to feather in there, and that was just with tippy toe pressure. And that is, to me, a sign that the brakes are doing a lot of work. So, home run. I'll take this. So let's head on down this really tight section here, and this is going to really put these brakes to the test. Wow. Okay, there it is. Good solid pedal feel. And again, good solid pedal feel. And I'm just floored by how light the pedal effort is now, and that's what you would hope for. So now that I know I love this setup, it's time to get this thing out on a big road trip. And then after that, I think it's time to put some suspension upgrades to this thing. Let me know, sound off in the comments, let me know what you like, and we'll explore getting that stuff or those parts on here. As you can tell, this stuff's kind of worn out. Should I be having this much fun driving this big old truck up this tight road? Is that weird? Who cares? It's a lot of fun. So let's get a little dirt womping in before the end of this one. Since all of the street driving was an absolute home run, let's just do a little bit of dirt driving. Because we can, and it's awesome. This is where this truck is the best. So there you have it.
The PowerStop complete brake upgrade for the Dodge Ram 1500 here. I absolutely love it. This was a home run upgrade. Next up, let's see, suspension, maybe road trip. I think we'll take a road trip next. Don't forget to follow me at AutoEdit Instagram, AutoEdit Jason, and stay tuned, subscribe, share, like these videos. I'm gonna hit the hills a little bit more. We'll see you next time, and until next time, enjoy your drive.